Received that Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis has died. Apparently, she has died within the last hour at her apartment in New York City. Again, Jackie Kennedy Onassis is dead.
It was the final line in a long-running romance. For many Americans, she was the eternal First Lady, elegant, gracious, and regal.
I often think of what she said about Jack in December after he died. They made him a legend when he would have preferred to be a man. Jackie would have preferred to be just herself, but the world insisted that she be a legend too.
Behind the legend was a woman many people met, but few people knew.
Politically, Jackie was the greatest asset Jack could have ever had.
She was always looking for the next thing that would make the world, how shall I say, a more beautiful place.
She believed in dignity, and the only way you could have dignity was to have privacy.
Jackie Kennedy Onassis was once asked by a friend to write her memoirs. She said no. When asked why, she said, "Life is too precious. I'd rather spend my time feeling a galloping horse or the mist of the ocean up at Martha's Vineyard."
She loved the moment that she was enjoying. She lived extraordinarily in the here and now. And even if the here and now was pretty disagreeable, like being out in the rain or cold and wet gloves and cold feet and so on, she just enjoyed it enormously.
Charlie Whitehouse had been a close friend of Jackie's from earliest childhood and remained close to her for the next 50 years.
She rode extremely well, and the horses went very well for her, and then she was as brave as a lioness. I can remember jumping places that I thought were pretty alarming, and she would say, safely on the other side, "Oh, Charlie, wasn't that thrilling?" Well, yes, it was thrilling, all right. I'd just as soon not have it be quite that big.
Jackie was born and brought up amongst the East Coast social elite. A privileged childhood, with education at the best private schools, was marred only by her parents' unconventional marriage. Her father was John Vernon Bouvier, a handsome, showy stockbroker of fluctuating fortunes.
Oh, he was a very colorful character. I think he probably would have been a perfect actor and just as good as Clark Gable in Gone with the Wind. She worshipped her father, and he was always interested in going to her horse shows, and he was always bragging about her. And it was a very, very close father-daughter relationship.
My mother sometimes would refer to Mr. Bouvier, Jackie's father. She always called him Black Jack, and also they called him the Sheikh. Evidently, he was a very smooth character who made passes at the girls, very innocent girls, and he was rather dreaded.
Her father's affairs would eventually lead to the breakup of the family. Shortly after this picture was published, Jackie's mother, Janet, there on the right of the photo, decided the marriage had to end. Janet Bouvier's second husband was the Wall Street financier Hugh D. Auchincloss, who lived at Hammersmith Farm in Newport, Rhode Island. Jackie and her sister Lee found themselves in a large new family.
Jackie and I, being the two eldest in the family, did an awful lot of the work. She took care of the chickens, and I helped milk the cows.
By then, Jackie was in her teens. She loved the outdoor life and the countryside around her home. When she graduated from high school, she wrote down in the class yearbook her ambition, not to be a housewife.
We take walks. She always loved to take walks around Hammersmith Farm and go through the gardens and down to the bay, and she knew a great deal about flowers and had a very romantic spirit.
At 17, she entered society as one of the debutantes of 1947. She was an immediate success.
The whole question of being a debutante was rather a serious affair, and the glossy magazines wrote about who were the prettiest debutantes, and of course the two Bouvier girls qualified very highly in that regard.
One newspaper columnist named Jackie Deb of the Year, describing her as a regal brunette who has classic features and the daintiness of Dresden porcelain.
She was always sort of the belle of the ball, and a lot of my friends was pursuing her, and they were always a little bit jealous of me because I was not only a close friend but also a stepbrother, and she would seek my advice on different men who were attracted to her, and so they were always trying to make a good impression on me too.
4 years later, she met the man who would change her life. Her youngest stepbrother remembers Kennedy's arrival. He was like a burst of fresh air in the Auchincloss household.
I said, "Hello, Kennedy," and with the same tone of voice he answered me, "Hello, Auchincloss," and for some reason this impressed me a lot, and I liked him from then on. Later that evening I had a passion for Chinese checkers, so I challenged him, and he beat me 7 games in a row, which had never happened to me before, so that impressed me even more.
The new senator from Massachusetts came from one of America's richest families, but it was money of a different sort. Instead of the somewhat staid respectability of the Auchincloss world, Jackie was brought head-to-head with the brash Irish energy of the Kennedys and their friends. Jack introduced his shy new girlfriend to his brothers and sisters in 1952. The man in this film, Paul Fay, was one of Jack's wartime friends.
The Kennedy sisters were very clannish, which can happen in a large Irish Catholic family. And Jackie came into the scene. Well, Jackie participated, but I think the sisters were somewhat in awe of Jackie. In other words, they didn't want to oppose Jackie. They wanted her to participate, which she did. But she had her own kind of separate personality and her separate way and her certain sense of dignity. Well, I think that she had something that I don't think Jack had ever seen in any other women that he took out. Jackie had a certain elegance to her, a certain sophistication. She had a way about her that was absolutely, well, it was intriguing. I mean, when you met Jackie, she, in her very soft, kind of somewhat breathless way of speaking, and obviously she was madly in love with Jack just by her attitude being around him. And Jack, I think, was getting used to the idea that he was engaged and about to get married, and it was interesting to see how he responded. I mean, where he wanted to, put his arms around her and kiss her, well, he didn't want to do it in front of me. He wanted, he was trying to act like somebody that was madly in love with the girl, which he was, but he didn't want to make a display of it.
Jack had asked Jackie to marry him in early 1953. Joe Kennedy, Jack's father, was delighted by his son's engagement. He made no secret of his determination to get Jack elected president, and he saw Jackie as an ideal accessory to his son's ambitions.
There was no push for success from Mr. and Mrs. Auchincloss, and all of that is, of course, quite different from the hard drive for success that the Kennedy parents, or at least that Mr. Kennedy, was imbuing his children with. And so to the older families of Newport and New York, the Kennedys were viewed with some questioning, to put it politely.
The culture clash between the East Coast hunting set and the fast-living Kennedys came to a head at a dinner to celebrate the engagement.
Well, we were at the Clam Bake Club, and Hughie Auchincloss, the stepfather, was the host for the dinner. And so the first glass, and Jack asked me what the custom. I said, well, I know there's beautiful crystal glasses, but I said, historically the custom is you drink the first one and it's into the fireplace. Well, Jack said, first toast of the evening was, to my future bride, Jackie. And he drank down his toast and he said, we will not drink out of this glass again in respect to my future bride, in the fireplace. Well, all 18 glasses except one flew in there. Hughie Auchinclosses did not fly in there. And then the waiters came back in and replaced the glasses. And then Jack, he shouldn't have done it, but they poured the glass again. He said, I'm so moved on this occasion. Another toast to the bride-to-be, down and in the fireplace. Another. Well, the rest of the glasses that came in were just plain kitchen glasses, and that's what we drank the rest of the evening out of.
Despite the family differences, the marriage was one of the social events of the year. She was given away by her stepfather. Her real father was in town, but just barely made it to the church.
Jackie's father had formed a very strong alliance with alcohol, and he had indicated that as early as about 10 o'clock in the morning, the day of the wedding. So Jack came up before it was over, and he said, do me a favor, and his nickname was Black Jack. He said, would you take Black Jack into the church? We got him into a pew, but it was an interesting maneuver.
It was a small glitch on a perfect day. Where other families were flat, Jackie once said, the Kennedys were like carbonated water. They drew her into the family network, and in return, she brought them the tacit stamp of social approval.
Jackie added class. She was wonderful looking. She was very intelligent, arch and clever, and knew how to play down her intelligence. She seemed very upper class, and the Kennedys thought that that was good first lady material for them.
It was the only girl that I think that he could have married, because she added, as I say, the elegance that she brought. She added certain social prestige that the Kennedys didn't have at that time. She had all those attributes besides being a beautiful, bright person.
For the Kennedys, the wedding was a triumph. Jack seemed to have found the ideal political wife. The ambitious young senator then returned with Jackie to Washington.
I'm told that all little boys have dreams. Some of them want to be policemen, others would like to be football stars, others would like to be a skipper on a Navy ship, others would like to be newspaper reporters, or perhaps a United States senator, or married to a most attractive bride. Senator John Kennedy of Massachusetts has accomplished all these things in his 36 years, except being a policeman. Are you there, Senator?
Yes, right here, Mr. Morrow.
Good evening, sir.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mrs. Kennedy.
Good evening.
I understand that the two of you had a very much publicized courtship. How did the two of you meet?
We met at the house of a friend about 2 years ago.
And you used to be a reporter, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
And you first met the senator when you interviewed him.
Well, I interviewed him shortly after I met him.
Well, now, which requires the most diplomacy? To interview senators or to be married to one?
Well, I think
Being married to one, I guess.
In 1960, Jack began his campaign for the White House. He was accompanied by a shy Jackie. In those early days, she found the political life hard to adjust to.
Oh, she hated it. She really hated it. She came. I mean, she had to be really pressured to, and we were going through Wisconsin. Not exactly her favorite spot, I don't guess, because it was a windy, snowbound winter in Wisconsin, and she'd be upstairs in the third floor, while he would be down on the bar trying to gather votes. And I would go up and see her, and she usually would be trying to find the name. The Buick company had an ad in which if you named the horse properly, you got a Buick. And she was determined to win that Buick. And I'd say, well, look, come on, we gotta go down there. Oh, and she said, do I have to go down there?
After Wisconsin, the campaign moved down to West Virginia, one of the poorest states in America. Kennedy knew that he had to win it, but his advisors thought Jackie was a problem.
We used to have a breakfast at the Kanawha Hotel where the headquarters was every morning, and this one morning I just decided that I had to speak up about this because I thought this woman was going to lose us votes. I feared she would be a disaster if she came into West Virginia because she seemed to me to be a pretty high tone for West Virginia, and they're going to be offended by someone in all these fancy clothes, designer clothes.
In fact, Jackie turned out to be a big hit.
There was one lady in particular I noticed that didn't have any shoes on. Well, nobody hadn't noticed, but and in a short while after that, you noticed that Jackie didn't have no shoes on. She had done kicked them off too, you know. And that people in West Virginia liked that. They sure did, because they figured there was some money woman coming in here that didn't care nothing about them and just wanted to get a vote or something, and that was it. But it didn't happen that way. People in West Virginia like Jacqueline Kennedy. It sure did.
Well, I was dead wrong. It turned out that the voters loved her, that she was perceived as the princess, and they bask in her glamour rather than being offended by it.
If I lost here, I'd find it extremely difficult to be nominated, is what I said.
After West Virginia, Jackie realized that she was now a major political asset and that politics could be worthwhile.
Did Mrs. Kennedy ever wish her husband weren't a busy candidate?
In the beginning, I wished that. When I was first married, our life was almost as hectic as it is now. And I found it rather hard to adjust. But now I think politics is one of the most rewarding lives a woman can have.
Nuts and bolts of politics never interested her, and yet it seems to me now, as I look back on it, that she seemed to be extremely good at it, that any politician would envy the number of covers she was on and the adulation that she got.
Jack was elected the 35th President of the United States in November of 1960. Jackie, pregnant with her second child, was now firmly in the public eye.
Yes, we plan to take his vacation here until Congress goes into session. We hope to take it in our own house.
Is your baby due before Inauguration Day?
When's Inauguration Day?
The White House, Washington, D.C. The eyes of the world are turned on a new president who 6 weeks ago took on the free world's most awesome responsibility.
From the moment they entered the White House, Jackie had to fight hard to protect at least one corner of their lives from the cameras. Documentary filmmaker Bob Drew was following their progress.
I proposed that when he moved into the White House, I go with him. One team with him, one team with his wife. That we see the White House as a working place through him and as a home through her. He called Jacqueline over and said what I would like to do. And Jacqueline, who had been so complimentary and warm, stiffened and said, "Nobody moves into the White House with me." And Kennedy's reaction was electric. He said, "Oh, of course not. And he sort of walked her away and calmed her down and came back to me and said, "Well, let's try the office."
In front of the camera, Jack threw himself into his new job. Behind the scenes, Jackie imposed her own style.
She did keep her own way of doing things, particularly under the pressures of being the so-called First Lady and in the turbulence of the Kennedy family way of life. And people joke about how Jack, instead of eating hot dogs, was eating cucumber sandwiches on picnics with her. But she just imposed in her own ladylike and delicate way the way she wanted things to be.
Although Jackie had captured the nation's attention, she considered her privacy paramount.
She was always a very private person, even at a young age. I mean, she'd ride by herself, she'd walk by herself, she'd jog by herself.
But Jackie's introspection did not lessen her sense of how things should look to the public. She was appalled, for instance, by the White House when she moved in. She compared it to the dungeon of a Russian prison, and the way she went about restoring it showed some of her newfound confidence.
There's no doubt that she, and anybody would learn in that position, suddenly being catapulted into becoming the First Lady of the United States, a country which is at the height of its power in the world, and becoming worldwide, world famous. That obviously did affect her, and she did grow, and there's no doubt about it in terms of being able to handle the public.
A tour of the White House with Mrs. John F. Kennedy, created and produced by CBS News for the CBS Television Network.
The King of Saudi Arabia had been invited to a state dinner the night that she had made arrangements for a tour of the White House the same evening. Now her time to go on national television was 9 o'clock. The king was due at 7, and boy, that was cutting it close. And the point is, he arrived on time, we served dinner on time, we had toasts and speeches, and they were, the last of them all were out at 9:15. And I stuck around for this fantastic performance.
Oh, this has a very different feeling than the Red Room.
Yes, it's blue, but you know, under President Monroe, it used to be red. The most fascinating thing is this pier table and bust. When we first came here and started searching for old things, we found the pier table in the carpenter shop where it was being used as a sawhorse. And we recognized it from old engravings. So we took us 6 weeks to restore it and put it back. And then in the men's room downstairs, we found that bust of Washington, which is very primitive. Yes, both sides of his face.
There was no run-through beforehand, no rehearsal, no preparation. She just came right out and in an impromptu, informal, offhand way almost, went into the provenance of every chair of interest, of every painting. She spoke well, she dressed the camera, she knew her stuff, no hesitation, a great performance.
This was something that came from her. This was a woman who had a tremendous knowledge, historical knowledge of all the great artworks in history. And when she went through the White House, she didn't have to look at a paper to talk about it. She did it from her own knowledge of it. And I think Jack was so proud of that asset that Jackie brought.
The arts were Jackie's first love, and in many fields she was a genuine expert. The White House became the gathering of talents, a glittering Camelot of the New World.
I'll just tell you one little incident. They went to Greece, and Jackie came back with some figurines. And they were, I saw these figurines. One was about maybe 6 inches tall. The other was about maybe a foot tall. And they paid an astronomical amount of money for it. And I said, how do you know you weren't taken? How do you know they're not phonies? And Jack said, well, Jackie's the authority. If you have any question about Jackie's knowledge of Greek history, why don't you go in the library and see if you can find a book on Greek history? Well, they gave me about 15 minutes, and I found a book, and I read through different chapters, the beginning of the chapters, and got names and things. And I came back into the room, and I said, all right, Jackie, I've got this book. Now tell me, who is this individual? I gave her 5 names, and she knew every single one of them. And Jack said, now are you satisfied we bought these things at the right price?
Jackie brought a personal elegance to the presidency as well, though Kennedy's longtime secretary, Mrs. Lincoln, remembered friction over the bills.
Clothes meant everything to her, and Kennedy was very upset. He thought she spent too much money. And one day she said to me, he's told me how much money I can spend on clothes, but I've got a couple checks here. I wish you kind of pass them through, because I made all his checks, you know. I took care of his accounts. And so she said, would you slide these 2 through? Try to get, oh yes, she loved clothes. She loved very expensive things too.
Behind the public image of a gilded couple lay a sometimes troubled marriage. What held them together were the 2 Kennedy children whom they had both adored, Caroline, born in 1957, and her younger brother, John Jr., born in 1960, just 2 weeks after Jack had won the election. Then, in August 1963, a chain of unrelenting tragedy began. First, Jackie gave birth to a premature boy who died after 3 days. To relieve her grief, Jackie's sister Lee invited her to Greece. The idea was to get away from Washington and recuperate on board a yacht of Lee's friend, the Greek shipping millionaire Aristotle Onassis.
At first, Kennedy didn't like the idea. But then he thought that she maybe would do her some good. And so he said, okay, you can. And he sent Franklin D. Roosevelt over also at the time, so to make it more respectable. That started Onassis fell for Jackie. And then it turned out that he became more than just a friend. But of course, that was in October 1963.
On her return from Greece, Jackie went campaigning with her husband for the first time in 3 years. The Democrats were in trouble, and Jack needed his wife's help fighting for re-election. Their hosts in Texas were Governor John Connally and his wife Nellie.
As we would drive down the roads, they would just scream, Jackie, Jackie, Jack, Jackie, but they seemed to want her as much as they wanted him.
It appears as though something has happened in the motorcade route. Something, I repeat, has happened in the motorcade route. There's numerous people running up the hill alongside Elm Street. there by the Simmons Freeway. Several police officers are rushing up the hill at this time. Stand by just a moment, please.
John, in front of him, turned around to see him and couldn't see him. So in the process of him turning to his left, he said he was hit by something that felt like somebody had just hit him as hard as they could with their doubled up fist. But I heard that second shot that hit John. John said, "No, no, no," as he was turning. He knew it was a gunshot, and he was afraid for the president. And then when he was hit, he said, "My God, they're going to kill us all." And the third shot came instantly, and we were covered with matter and blood and matter and everything that, of course, came from the shot to the president's head. And then Miss Kennedy said, "I've got his brains in my hands."
Shooting. Boston Hospital has been advised to stand by for a severe gunshot wound. I repeat, a shooting in the motorcade in the downtown area. Boston Hospital has been advised to stand by for a severe gunshot wound.
And just now we've received reports here at Parkland that Governor Connolly was shot in the upper left chest, and the first unconfirmed reports say the president was hit in the head. That's an unconfirmed report that the president was hit in the head.
You know, we got into that hospital, and they put Jack in trauma room 1 and John in trauma room 2, and somebody brought 2 chairs, and Jackie and I sat outside those 2 doors. We never said a word to each other, she knowing her husband was dead, me wondering if we could make it. But she was very strong and very strong. She was a strong woman.
That night, Jackie made the wrenching journey back to Washington with her husband's body. Before the flight back, she witnessed the swearing-in of Lyndon B. Johnson as president. She had refused to change out of the blood-stained pink suit she had been wearing when the day began. Her friends were waiting when she returned.
I got to the White House maybe an hour or so before Jackie came in. And when she came by the door that led into the Lincoln room where the body was, and she saw me standing in the steps below, and she just took her dress and showed me her dress. The blood stains across it. It was just a terrible minute for her, and she knew it wasn't a good time for either of us.
There was nothing I could say. All you do is put my arms around her and hug her. Then went over behind a drape and cried my eyes out. But she had this, she was an amazing woman. That, her strength and her sense of what was right and her dignity through the whole thing. And she carried a lot of us that weren't as strong as she was.
Jackie was the supreme authority. We set up a working room in the West Wing of the White House, and there were some very, very sensitive and difficult decisions. First decision was, where should he be buried? And the recommendations was in Boston at his family's tomb there, the Kennedy graveyard, until she decided no. She sent word down that he was to be buried at Arlington.
Over the next 4 days, Jackie came to symbolize the nation's grief and its pride. The funeral would transform her image and immortalize her. few days later, an insight into Jackie's turmoil and suffering was revealed by her daughter Caroline to her teacher.
I hear Caroline saying in almost a stage whisper, "My mummy cries all the time." And I at first thought I will ignore that. I will just go on with the story, which I did, only to hear her repeat it. And so I said to her, "Caroline, we'll talk about that later." "Yes, we will." And so after class was over and the other children left, I sat with Caroline and I said, "Now I know you want to talk about your mummy crying as she does." And she said, "Every morning when I go in and get in bed with Mommy, she's crying."
In 1964, Jackie went to live in New York. Her innermost thoughts, revealed at the time to writer Theodore White, have recently been made public. Jackie told White, "I'm not going to be the widow Kennedy in public. When this is over, I am going to crawl into the deepest retirement there is."
She was really in, fairly bad shape for a few years there. I mean, a series of, there's a lot of real grief. She was adrift, and her life had been ruptured in a very dramatic way, and one that had to be, you have your husband's brains spilled in your lap. That's a bit of a trauma, I would think. And so that I think that she really was trying to come to terms with all that, with his death, with the manner of his death, with the fact of his death.
She bought an apartment on Fifth Avenue and moved in with her 2 children. She was still under the wing of the Kennedy family, and particularly close to her brother-in-law, Robert Kennedy.
You see, she had relied on Robert Kennedy for so much support. Whenever she'd go into a decline or a slump, he'd go and buck her up. And she was constantly in his company here in New York. He was a senator from New York, and the number of times when I went out with Jackie, Robert Kennedy would go along. And she put tremendous reliance on his support, not only physical, but, emotional and psychological.
Can we just look this way for a minute?
Jackie rarely made public appearances. When she did, it was to remind the world of her husband.
Well, I don't think people should forget President Kennedy. And all this effort that was made for 2.5 years. Is it just going to be forgotten or ended? Or is some way going to be found to make it keep going? And some seed that he planted? Maybe it'll be taken up by a young boy who'll be like he was at Harvard in his days. After all, that's when he wrote Why England Slept. That's when he sort of started. Maybe you'll plant a seed somewhere, then someone else like President Kennedy will come along. And those are the kind of men who are going to save the world.
An early candidate for that role was Bobby Kennedy, who ran for president in 1968. With Bobby's campaign gathering the familiar Kennedy momentum, Jackie tentatively became involved in politics again.
My thanks to all of you, and now it's on to Chicago, and let's win there.
On the evening of June 5th, Jackie went to a fundraising dinner with another long-standing friend.
And after we'd been to this fundraiser, and she signed all kinds of autographs and generally, made herself desirable to the people who were there and helped get subscriptions. I took her home about 11:30, and about 2:30, I turned on the radio and found that Robert Kennedy had been shot.
Get the gun! Get the gun! Get the gun! Stay away from the gun.
Get the gun!
Stay away from the gun. His hand is frozen. Get his thumb. Get his thumb. Get his thumb.
Get his hand!
Take a hold of his thumb and break it if you have to. Get his thumb.
It was a major blow to her. You see, she had relied on Robert Kennedy for so much support. It was clear to me that once Bobby was removed from the scene, she was going to turn to somebody else, and that's what I believe motivated to marry Onassis.
Jackie's friendship with Onassis was now widely known. Still, her sudden marriage to him in 1968 stunned millions.
She had the image in the United States of a dream girl, a princess, the Lady of Camelot. And for her to marry this gnome-like billionaire turned off Americans, turned off the Kennedys. He was not a handsome man. He was an ugly man. And to marry a princess with an ugly man was kind of like the fairy tale about the princess and the frog.
It had to be somebody who could cope with this turmoil and somebody who could bring order out of the chaos of her life. At that point, I think her thinking reasonably was her own, and she could care less about, I think it was extreme, these things that happened around her. And if they could happen, where does it stop? I think that was her anguish at that time.
Jackie herself never discussed her reasons for marrying Onassis, even with friends and family.
You had learned a long time ago that unless she wanted to discuss something with you and bring it up herself, which in this case she didn't, you wouldn't ask her. It was a rather strange situation to know about, that it was not, to me, particularly natural. But I can see, the older I get, how important it was for her to not let anybody in when she didn't want them in.
But later she put it quite simply. I wanted to go away. They were killing Kennedys, and I didn't want them to harm my children. Rare glimpses of Jackie's life after her marriage to Onassis come from family movies, shown here publicly for the first time. She saw little of her husband and spent most of her time in New York, trying to give her children the normal life that their name and circumstances had conspired to destroy. Her children and her circle of eclectic friends occupied most of her time.
To bring up two children in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s on Fifth Avenue in New York City, bearing the most famous political name in American history in the case of John, she felt that if you had dignity, you would have sanity, and I think she saw around her many cases of the spoiled or the rich in New York, being over photographed and over publicized, and their lives being ruined by it.
She wanted them to have as much as possible a normal sort of upbringing, and it's just hard when every time you walk back and forth from school in New York, you're passing newsstands with big cover pictures of your father or you, maybe, as a little kid, or your mother. So she tried to keep as much of it away as she could. But as a matter of fact, they managed to lead them, if you go back, a fairly private life.
Although her second marriage provided her with the privacy and security she craved, it had not been a success in other ways. Aristotle Onassis did spend time in New York with her, but did not disguise his disenchantment to close friends.
Came from the office, and I went up, stopped in, and I asked Harry if I could borrow a coat from him. He said, sure, come on. He took me upstairs, and while we're talking, I said, well, how's it going? And he said, oh, we're just going through the motions.
Aristotle Onassis died in 1975, before he could follow through with his plans for a divorce. At his death, Jackie issued a short statement to the press. He rescued me at a time when my life was engulfed in shadows. I shall be eternally grateful. Once again, Jackie was alone. Her marriage had left her wealthy, but she continued her work as a book editor, first at Viking, then at Doubleday.
She took her job completely seriously, and she cared about her writers and what was happening there. And she treated us all, I haven't talked to other writers about this, but she would call up on the telephone in the morning and say, look, I've just read this, what do you think about doing, she had ideas for other books that she thought I should be doing, or other people should be doing, and what did I think about that? Oh, she was not only tough and well-read, but she knew everything that was going on. And she knew that everything that had been going on since the beginning of the century in the arts. I think that's fair to say.
Jackie spent the last decade of her life as a leading society book editor. Her private life was shared with a Belgian-born financier, Maurice Tempelsman.
Now, I think that Maurice would be the first person to say that he's not a pin-up boy in any way, but that didn't matter at all. He is so attractive and so much fun to be with that whether he's tall and slender and good-looking didn't make any difference to her, and it doesn't make any difference to his friends. I think that they were very, very happy together.
His anonymity was an ideal contrast. In a rare newspaper interview, she had once complained of always being seen through the different names she had had. Throughout my life, I have always tried to be true to myself, she said. This I will continue to do as long as I live. Early in 1994, Jackie was diagnosed with cancer. By May, she knew there was no hope.
Well, the last time I actually saw her was the day she died. She had cancer, and I gather she'd undergone a lot of pain, and with the chemotherapy, radiation, or whatever, and she just went back home and didn't take any more treatment, and nature just took its course.
Word has just been received that Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis has died. Apparently, she has died within the last hour at her apartment in New York City. Again, Jackie Kennedy Onassis is dead.
She was a princess, and I think in behavior, in elegance, in taste, she was a princess. She's the only American princess I think we've ever had.
She was a happy New Yorker. And to be a happy New Yorker is to be I don't know, to be on top of the world. And that's where she was. And that's where, to many of us, she always will be.
Their last advice to me is I left her at lunch a couple of weeks before she she does. She said, well, just keep your weight down and keep your hair cut. I thought that was excellent advice, some of the best I've ever had for a woman or a man.
She was buried alongside her first husband at Arlington Cemetery. His memorial stone was moved to one side to make room for hers. Her last request of her children was to respect her wish for privacy.